Hey there, hello there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 video. And today we are going to be looking at the top 10 boxing upsets in history. Boxing is always known as the sweet science, and sometimes you have sweet boxers who could easily beat their opponents, and then you have maybe some sweet underdogs who could win fights when they had to. So, them's the breaks. But anyhow, let's look at the top 10 boxing upsets of all time. Number 10 is Antonio Tarver versus Roy Jones Jr., 2004. Tarver was kind of a journeyman. Roy Jones Jr. was one of the best pound for pound boxers around, and he knew it too. And of course, the name Roy Jones Jr. is synonymous with the fact that in 1988 at the Olympics in Seoul, he actually was fighting the Korean boxer Park Chi-sung. I can't remember the name, but anyway, he had basically outmaneuvered his Korean opponent, and the Korean opponent figured he was going to lose. But somehow, in some way, the Korean boxer won the gold medal. Roy Jones would get silver. He would get a award called the Fel Barker Award for best boxer at the Olympics. But he got robbed. He really got robbed. A lot of the judges actually were accused of taking bribes from South Korean officials because, South Korea was bitter over their boxers being treated badly in the US in 1984, so they were getting revenge. But Roy Jones Jr. had a great career and all that, but then in 2004, Antonio Tarver put up a KO. Not just any KO, a second round KO. Matches usually last 12 rounds, but in the second round, Tarver won. And it was the first time that Roy Jones Jr. was ever stopped, as in he had lost by non-judges' decision. I mean, Roy Jones Jr. had lost, but the judges decided that. Number 9 is Randy Turpin shocking Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson was one of the best middleweights of all time. Of course, you could obviously say Sugar Ray Leonard, but Sugar Ray Robinson was the first Sugar Ray. That was a legend. Randy Turpin came over from England to fight Sugar Ray Robinson. Wow, he came to his hometown of London to face Sugar Ray Robinson. Robinson had to go across the country, the continent, the Atlantic. Then Turpentine, as I would call him, put up a major upset and ended up winning the middleweight championship. I think Sugar Ray won it back. I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, that's how it is. Number 8 is Corey Sanders taking out Vladimir Klitschko. Corey Sanders came from South Africa. He was a heavy underdog and would face the Ukrainian Klitschko. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, isn't it Vladimir Klitschko? No, Vladimir did fight in boxing too, but Vladimir was the guy, and he was highly touted. So anyhow, Corey Sanders would KO Vladimir in the second round, and Vladimir would have to start all the way from the bottom again to try to be a heavyweight legend, and he was. Oh, it took him longer, of course, because of Corey Sanders. Number 7 is Lloyd Honeyghan, or the Honey Badger, as I want to call him, against Don Curry, 1986. Don Curry was a great welterweight, and he looked pretty good. I thought he was Jamaican, but I guess he's American. Don Curry is. Anyway, Lloyd Honeyghan will travel to the United States and dominate Donald Curry to TKO Curry and win a match, which was huge because Curry, I don't know if he was a champion of welterweight. Anyway, that, that's how it goes. Number 6 is Manny Pacquiao against Lelo Ledwaba. Now, Ledwaba was allegedly a good boxer and all that. So, yeah, Leo Ledwaba was actually the IBF Super Bantamweight champion, and all that. And then, of course, he turned into a decent guy. And then Manny Pacquiao, who actually was a good Filipino boxer, but only within his own country, was a late substitute and actually beat Ledwaba for that belt. Little did people know that it was going to give Pacquiao titles in, was it 8 different divisions? Weight divisions, which is one of the legendary boxing moments of all time. So, anyhow, that was big. Number 5 is Leon Spinks versus Muhammad Ali, 1978. Leon Spinks had only fought 8 times in boxing as a professional. He would have to face Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight belt. It's kind of weird because, you usually have like 10 or 20 belts under your belt. You go from low end to high end, and then somehow he stepped in to win. Anyhow, Spinks would face Muhammad Ali for the belt, and then a split decision was happening, and it was a major surprise. Leon Spinks was one of the youngest heavyweight champions of all time, and he did it in his 8th fight, beating Muhammad Ali. A split decision in boxing is when 2 of the 3 judges, well, after the round's over, like after, if nobody gets a decision within the normal rounds, they go to the judges. And if 2 of the 3 judges agree on one fighter, well, and then the other on another one, that's called a split decision. A majority decision. Now, split decision is, yeah, is it? Oh no, split decision is when 2 fighters pick you, and then one judge picks for both fighters, like a tie. So it's 2-0-1. A majority decision is when you go 2 out of 3, and a unanimous decision when you get all 3. Spinks had done it, but to Ali's credit, he didn't give up and fight. And he would fight Leon Spinks and beat him in a rematch. Unfortunately, this was almost the beginning to the end of Ali's career with Parkinson's and all that. Number 4 is Hashim Rahman shocking Lennox Lewis in South Africa, which was strange. I thought Rahman was from South Africa because it's like, why would you have to fight in South Africa if you have a American versus a Brit or a closeted Canadian, if you will. Of course, Lennox Lewis was a great champion and represented England quite well in professionally, but amateurly he fought in Canada, and you know he he almost won the 1984 Super Heavyweight Championship, but lost to Tyrone Biggs. And then in 1988 against Riddick Bowe, he beat Riddick Bowe. A lot of people said it was shocking because Bowe actually lost by referee stoppage and all that, and he was dominating Lewis. But them's the breaks. The strange thing about the Lewis Bowe Olympic controversy is that it's actually the same day as Roy Jones Jr.'s brutal loss. October, what, 4th, 1988? Can't remember. Nevertheless, or no, it was October 2nd, 1988. So anyway, Lennox was a great champion. He once won a title after, I believe, Bowe threw one of the belts in a trash can, and then Lennox Lewis picked it up out of the trash can and won the belt. But anyway, Lennox was an icon. I mean, I know he should have been fighting for Canada because he's one of the greatest Canadian boxers of all time. Not top 5. Of course, that'll be the next list. But the fact of the matter is that Lennox would face Hashim Rahman, who was a 20-1 underdog. And he actually KO'd Lennox Lewis. A lot of people said Lennox was not himself. His fight preparations were actually clouded by bad judgment. Kind of like number 1 on this list. But anywho, Lennox did get the title back from Rahman. And Rahman, a couple years later, I don't know if it was Lennox Lewis or someone else, but he had a grotesque punch and grotesquely had a forehead that looked ballooned. Anyway, number 3 is Andy Ruiz Jr. against Anthony Joshua 2019. Anthony Joshua was a pretty good English boxer who served to be a heavyweight staple and all that. But somehow, in some way, he would lose his heavyweight belt in a strange way. Andy Ruiz Jr. was actually a late replacement for somebody. I can't remember who he was supposed to be in for. We'll take a look at the stats here. Yeah. It was supposed to be Gerald Miller, but Gerald Miller actually was replaced by Ruiz Jr. because of the fact that Miller failed 3 drug tests. Well, you can't do that, man. So anyhow, he came in and would put Joshua to the mat 4 times. Like would punch him. Joshua would get up 4 times before finally the referee said enough was enough and stopped the fight and took care of business. And Andy Ruiz Jr. would be the heavyweight champion for a little bit. But Anthony Joshua was an icon, and Ruiz did it. He shocked the world. He really shocked the world. Now, of course, a lot of people say when I talk about dropping him 4 times, down goes Frazier comes to mind when Joe Frazier lost the heavyweight belt to George Foreman. But I don't think that was much of an upset. Foreman was an up and comer, so they figured that Foreman could do something about it. Number 2 is the great Muhammad Ali Sonny Liston fight from 1964. You'd be thinking 1965, but that's wrong. Of course, that's when Ali defended his belt against Liston, and Liston apparently laid down for gamblers. That's what they're saying. Anyway, Cassius Clay, soon to be Muhammad Ali, went up through the ranks. Clay would win the gold medal in 1960 against a Polish fighter. Don't ask me how to pronounce his last name because I ain't Polish. Anyway, Clay would still be facing prejudice and all that. So much so he decided to drop his gold medal into the Ohio River in Louisville, Kentucky in 1961. But he went through the ranks and then would face Sonny Liston, who was known as a brawler and kind of a, um, I would say a brat, but like a thug. So yeah, Sonny Liston was known as a thug in a sense because he had thuggish connections. Anyway, few gave Ali a chance and all that. However, Ali was confident he would be spreading poetry about Cassius, saying he would take it down in the 8th round, I believe. But his speed and confidence worked out, and Liston, after the 6th round, refused to leave his corner, meaning that Ali would be the champion in the 7th round TKO, shocking the world and launching his legendary career. He kept saying, I shook up the world! I shook up the world! I'm a bad man! Sure was. And of course, he beat Liston in the rematch, and then Ali would be heavyweight champion until he got stripped because he refused to be in the U.S. Army. The question on my mind is, would the U.S. Army have let him go to Vietnam, or would they have given him some kind of ceremonial thing? It was never assumed. It was never touched upon. But I think they wanted him to go into to the army. I thought it would be in a ceremonial role. But of course, this was the time when almost anyone who was healthy enough could be drafted for Vietnam, a war that the Americans should have just admitted they failed. Of course, Ali would be getting the championship back in 1974 thanks to Foreman. And at number 1 is Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, 1990. You would probably figure that. Any good boxing fan would know that. Yeah, Buster Douglas was an icon for taking out Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was huge, winning all 3 heavyweight belts by 1987, becoming the youngest IBF, WBO, and WBA champion. You know, those guys. So yeah, he beat Trevor Burbick for one. I think it was Pinklin Thomas for another, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. But anyhow, Mike Tyson was unbeatable and all that. Tyson did have some personal demons. I mean, he had a terrible marriage with Robin Givens in which both sides were guilty of crapola, such as Tyson apparently beating up Robin Givens and Robin giving Tyson quaaludes, no, not quaaludes, give him sedatives and basically trying to drain his money from an account. But of course, Mike Tyson lost his legendary trainer. Was it Lou Duva? I can't remember. But anyway, yeah, Lou Duva gave him a chance to be a champion. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, anyway, Mike Tyson was just basically thuggish and basically didn't want to fight or something like that. Buster Douglas was an iconic fighter. Well, he was decent, but he was only in boxing to please his dad, who was a professional himself. Buster just had some good times in boxing, and then he would lose and lose focus and all that. So Buster was in over his head, they said, against Mike Tyson. It was so bad, well, Douglas's odds against Tyson, that no American venue wanted to hold the fight, much less put odds on the fight. But it was a 42-1 odds. That's what the boxing establishment said. And it was in Tokyo, Japan, the day after a wrestling card from the AWA. But anyway, yeah, it was a nice boxing event, and Buster Douglas wanted to prove everyone wrong and saying he could beat Mike Tyson, or at least battle with Mike Tyson. Now, Buster had some motivation because his mother, Lulu Bell, died weeks prior, so he had to do it for her. Unfortunately, Mike Tyson's cornermen were guilty of giving Mike Tyson a loss because they didn't come with the right equipment for stuff. And when Tyson had kind of a bump above his eye, they treated it with something that was not commonly known and wrong. Anyhow, Tyson allegedly won the fight in the eighth round, but Buster Douglas was saved by the bell because I think the rule was that, there was less than 10 seconds and Douglas could get up before 10 and he did. And everyone thought Tyson won the fight, but nope, he didn't. And then in the 10th round, Douglas somehow got Tyson with some jabs and then an uppercut. Mike Tyson lost his mouthpiece, was scrambling for it. And guess what? Buster Douglas was the champ. It happened. It happened. And everyone was just shocked. Mike Tyson would actually fight a few times, win, but then he had that trial against Desiree Washington, a Miss Black America contestant. He allegedly groped. I think he did grope. A lot of people said Mike Tyson's, his personality during the court case actually made him an easy target. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his stuff and all that. He got out of prison. He got back to the pro boxing circuit. He beat Bruce Seldon for the belt in like a minute and a half. And then he was supposed to be great, but then Holyfield humbled him in their first fight. And in the second fight, he resorted to biting Holyfield's ear because of all the clinching problems. And of course, Tyson would be controversial throughout the rest of his career. But the good news was never on Buster Douglas. But Buster Douglas also suffered too, despite him being the heavyweight champion and being a referee in a WWE TV main event thing between Macho Man and Hulk Hogan. Unfortunately, Buster was not the same. Buster lived the high life and kind of like Roberto Duran after beating Sugar Ray Leonard in Montreal. He just ate himself and partied himself too much. He just basically was a shell of his former self. Of course, in heavyweight, there is a limit. There's not really a weight limit to how much weight you can have in heavyweight. I think it's like 220, but there's no other um, line. Buster would gain a lot of weight. He was noticeably slower against Evander Holyfield and easily lost in the third round. Buster was so bad and so fat and so all that he had to be in a diabetic coma for a while. But then he came back and lost weight and made some kind of fighting thing. So at least there's a happy ever after. And Buster Douglas didn't die young. So that's just the way it is. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond at Duke.